But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down. This matters. It matters because the British public deserve politicians who think the rules apply to them.
Starmer had vowed that if police fine him on charges of breaking lockdown rules, he would resign. Now, this statement has come to haunt him because it has been nearly proven that Starmer broke lockdown rules. And this time, people won't let this slide away because Starmer was the one who actively criticised Boris Johnson in the Partygate scandal that ultimately led to Johnson's resignation.
Allegra Strachan laughed at breaking the rules. She resigned. The Prime Minister then claimed he was furious at her behaviour and accepted her resignation. Professor Neil Ferguson broke the rules. He also resigned. The Prime Minister said that was the right thing to do. The former Health Secretary broke the rules. He too resigned. The Prime Minister tried to claim he sacked him. Why does the Prime Minister think everybody else's actions have consequences? Except
now, the same scandal haunts Starmer. But how did Starmer break the lockdown laws, especially in the context that he was most confident that he did not do anything wrong? And will Starmer resign, keeping his word that lawmakers should respect the law, and if they don't, they should step down? In this video, let's know about the whole story. Keir Starmer is now facing what could be the biggest crisis of his political career, and ironically, it is one of his own making. His entire public persona has been built around the idea that he is the responsible, law-abiding alternative to previous leaders like Boris Johnson, whose own Partygate scandal led to his downfall.
the same rules as everyone else. When my mother-in-law passed away suddenly just before the lockdown, my wife and I were unable to provide her father with the support we wanted to afterwards, because we followed the rules. Barely a day has passed where we haven't agonised over that decision, but we did it because we followed the rules. We all found the rules frustrating at times, and I'm no exception to that. I had to isolate.
The irony is that when Starmer said these words, he himself knew he was lying. At that time, Starmer was at the forefront of demanding Johnson's resignation, arguing that politicians who break the law must step down. But now, the same accusations are being levelled against him. Starmer's entire argument rested on the claim that he was different, that he was a leader of integrity, someone who followed the rules, someone who held others accountable. And today, if he does not resign after being found guilty of breaking lockdown laws, his credibility will be in ruins.
I'm absolutely clear that no laws were broken. They were followed at all times. I simply had something to eat while working late in the evening, as any politician would do days before an election. But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down. This matters. It matters because the British public deserve politicians who think the rules apply to them. They deserve politicians who hold themselves to the highest standards. And they deserve politicians who put the country first, rather than...
Now, it's the time Starmer should keep his word. That's because the allegations against Starmer are not just political attacks. They are rooted in concrete evidence. On Christmas Eve 2020, when London was under strict Tier 4 lockdown restrictions, Starmer was caught meeting his voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, in person at Labour HQ in central London. Under the rules at the time, people were required to work from home unless it was absolutely necessary. Mellinger, who travelled over 50 miles from Brighton to London, would not have qualified as an essential worker under any reasonable definition.
The other issue is that Starmer's voice/com/acting coach was considered so essential that she qualified as a key worker during COVID. Now look, I don't know about you, but I seem to remember key workers being those who were absolutely pivotal to the continuation of society, not least so people could keep working. Doctors, nurses, train drivers, teachers, the police. I know Boris Johnson infamously called Sir Keir Starmer the human bollard, but surely the Labour leader's ambition to find a bit of character could have waited until after an apparently deadly pandemic had passed.
This is where Starmer's hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. The same leader who called for harsher, faster lockdowns and accused the government of ignoring public health guidance was bending the rules for his own benefit. Even more surprising is that Mellinger had been working remotely with him in the past. If her coaching could be conducted virtually before, why was it suddenly necessary for her to be there in person? The logic does not hold up. Starmer has tried to spin the story, claiming that he was merely working on a press response to Boris Johnson's Brexit deal and that he needed his team around him. But the details of this excuse don't make sense. Many professionals had to adjust to virtual work during the pandemic, and a vocal coach does not fall under the category of essential personnel who were legally permitted to bypass lockdown restrictions. The fact that even Labour's own justifications for her presence are contradictory only raises more questions about whether Starmer knowingly broke the rules.
This is a story that is gathering a lot of momentum and shows no signs of going away. Should Keir Starmer be investigated by the police for allegedly breaking lockdown rules? If there is a police investigation, that he should also promise to resign if he's found to have broken the rules, shouldn't he? Keir Starmer has an unbelievably thin skin, and today you can tell that the revelations that a voice coach and an actress visited him at Labour HQ on Christmas Eve when London was in Tier 4 lockdown.
Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now. The most devastating part of this scandal is that Starmer set himself up for failure. When Boris Johnson faced backlash over Partygate, Starmer made it his personal mission to tear him down, insisting that breaking the law, even for minor infractions, was grounds for resignation. But now, when he was asked about what he would do as he is in question, he declined to answer.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key worker?
Perhaps he forgot that he once said that a lawmaker cannot be a lawbreaker, and that if rules are broken, the lawmaker should step down. He went even further, promising to resign if he was ever fined for breaching lockdown rules. This was a bold move when he was still the leader of the opposition, a position where he had little to lose. But now that he is Prime Minister, the stakes are much higher. He has already been accused of repeated hypocrisy, most notably during the Beergate incident, where he was pictured drinking beer and eating takeaway with colleagues in Durham while COVID rules were still in effect. He narrowly escaped consequences that time. However, this time, his reputation might not survive.
I tell you what this looks like, Prime Minister. It looks like there was one rule for you and your lovey mates during COVID and one rule for everyone else. It looks like you wanted to lock us all up, ban us from seeing our grandparents, stop us from visiting dying relatives in hospital, but you could get some has-been actress at your beck and call whenever you wanted. Keir Starmer has developed a reputation with the public for not necessarily always sticking to his word, whether that's with pensioners, waspy women, farmers, securing the border, cutting your energy bills, reducing taxes, you name it. So do you really believe him now? Do we really believe all the rules were followed? Do we believe him when he says this?
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key worker? Of course not, he says, of course not. Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's get the police involved, Prime Minister. After all, we've had 2-tier Keir, now we've got Tier 4 Keir, haven't we? And maybe the Prime Minister should ask for his money back from that voice coach after all.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
The Tories wasted no time in seizing on the scandal. Conservative MP Richard Holden formally called for an independent investigation, stating that if Starmer does not resign, he will be guilty of the very same double standards he accused Johnson of. There is no easy escape from this situation. If Starmer continues to claim innocence, he will only reinforce the perception that he is just another politician who believes the rules do not apply to him. However, even if Starmer refuses to step down voluntarily, there are multiple ways in which he could still be pushed out of office. If public pressure becomes overwhelming, his position could become indefensible. When Boris Johnson faced public outrage over Partygate, his approval ratings plummeted. If the same happens to Starmer, as is already happening, he could lose control of the narrative and be forced to step down to save the Labour Party from collapse. If major media outlets continue to dig into the inconsistencies in his story, the scandal could grow into something he can't ignore.
This apparent rule breach from Sir Keir Starmer came during a much more serious time of COVID than his Beergate drama in Durham. Do you remember that? Where he and Labour colleagues, including Angela Rayner, gathered for lagers and curries. Remember this? There he was, the leader of the opposition at the time, swigging from a bottle, raising concerns that he wasn't working at all. He was actually eventually given the all clear by Durham police for that meeting. He got away with it. But all of this matters because Keir Starmer was the first person during COVID to demand the government went harder and faster with draconian rule.
Another major risk for Starmer is an internal Labour coup. Labour MPs have long harboured leadership ambitions, and this scandal could be the perfect excuse for a challenger like Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting to make a move. If Labour sees Starmer as a liability ahead of future elections, pressure from within the party itself could push him out. Rival factions within Labour have already tried to organise leadership coups in the past. If they sense weakness, they will seize the opportunity.
Nonetheless, I think there is the possibility of severe turbulence ahead. And, there is a group of very, very powerful, probably they've got the intellectual edge at the moment, the Blairites. And I'm thinking of people like Wes Streeting and lots of his allies, Liz Kendall being one of his allies and stuff, inside, the reformers inside government. And there is the soft left, who would probably gather, as it were, under the Angela Rayner banner these days, I think. But Louise Hay would certainly be part of that instinct. And I just really, really hope they don't go to war with each other.
Even though the Metropolitan Police have declined to investigate due to the 3-year deadline for initiating COVID-related proceedings, that does not mean Starmer is entirely safe. If political pressure continues to mount, there may still be ways to force a review of the case. If Starmer is officially found guilty of a violation, he would have no choice but to resign, as he promised. However, Starmer is trying to downplay the allegations, hoping that the public will move on. But the reality is that this scandal isn't just about whether he broke the rules. It's about his integrity, his leadership, and the massive hypocrisy that now defines him.
Patrick Maguire's book and Gabriel Pogren's book, which has been serialised in one of the papers today, and it's got a lot of stuff in it. And Leonie Mellinger's obviously getting a fair bit of publicity out of it. Now, look, Keir Starmer said, no, without any equivocation, if the police found him guilty and he was received an official caution or any form of judgment, he would resign. Yeah. I'd imagine he'd do the same thing now, because you cannot say he's anything other than a man who...
However, analysts believe he will refuse to resign because that's how he is. He doesn't care about his honour or reputation when his interests are under threat.
Yeah.
If I am fined by the police for Beergate, he was called Cormac here, Beer here at the time.
Whatever,
He got away with it. Yeah. He did say, as you said, I'll resign. So you think now, even though he's Prime Minister, he would still resign?
As far as I'm concerned, that from what I know of the man, if this is a real breach of the law and if he is found guilty of it, then he would certainly consider his position.
I highly doubt that. Absolutely.
I don't doubt it for a minute.
Keir Starmer, after only 6 months into being Prime Minister, just going to let it all go, step down because of this.
But you honestly... let's find out.
He didn't resign when we had the whole Lord Ali saga. They thought they'd gotten away.
Keir Starmer's refusal to resign, despite being caught breaking the same COVID-19 rules he once weaponised against Boris Johnson, would make him the definition of a hypocrite. If he now chooses to ignore his own past demands for accountability, it will confirm what his critics have long suspected. He is no different from the politicians he has attacked. In fact, he may be worse because he was the one who set the standard that he is now refusing to meet. If Boris Johnson had tried to stay in office after being fined, Starmer would have been at the forefront of a political firestorm, calling for his immediate resignation. So why does Starmer think he is exempt from the same consequences? The answer is simple. He expected never to be caught. He was confident that he had been careful enough to avoid scrutiny, and now that his own wrongdoing has been exposed, he is scrambling to justify it. But back in the past, he did not miss the chase to mock Boris Johnson on that.
Finally, what he twigged off, sort of wading through the bottles and the food, he finally twigged he might be at a party, having sort of said hello to everybody with a glass of wine. This must be a party. And then he says in the dispatch box, well, I wish I'd sort of got everybody in, because I'd obviously stumbled on this party in my own back garden. Absolute horror. And after half an hour, I'd worked out it was a party, so I should have stopped it happening.
I should have sent everyone back inside.
How does that fit with his first defence, which was there were no parties?
Guidance was followed completely during number 10.
Or his second defence, that in December 2021, he was furious about he just found out about them.
I'm furious about that.
If he's now saying back in 2020, he found out after 25 minutes it was a party, and he should have got everybody in.
If Starmer continues to cling to power, he will not just be seen as a rule breaker, he will be seen as a fraud, someone who spent years posturing as a man of principle only to betray his own rhetoric when it became inconvenient. What do you think? Will Starmer resign, as it has become clear he violated lockdown rules? Or will he pressure the police not to investigate him to save his political career? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on the fact that Starmer should resign and show some honour because he himself knows he broke lockdown laws. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.